Assalamu alaikum. Ibn Khaldun, the renowned 14th century Muslim thinker, was aware he was making a revolutionary discovery with his studies on the science of civilization, the ilm al-Umran, and that his insights on the rise and fall of empires were a major breakthrough, quote unquote. Such is the purpose of this first book of our work. The subject is, in a way, an independent science. This science has its own peculiar object, that is, human civilization and social organization. It should be known that the discussion on this topic is something new, extraordinary and highly useful. In fact, I have not come across a discussion along these lines by anyone. End of quote. Although he was a pioneering scholar for his time and place, he knew his ideas and theories may have not been unique. As the Romans used to say, nil dictum quod non dictum prius. Nothing has been said that has not been said before, quote unquote. Perhaps people have written exhaustively on this topic, and their work did not reach us. There are many sciences. There have been numerous sages among the nations of mankind. The knowledge that has not come down to us is larger than the knowledge that has. Where are the sciences of the Persians that Omar radiallahu anh ordered wiped out at the time of the conquest? Where are the sciences of the Chaldeans, the Syrians and the Babylonians, and the scholarly products and results that were theirs? Where are the sciences of the ancient Egyptians, their predecessors? The sciences of only one nation, the Greek, have come down to us, because they were translated through Caliph al-Ma'mun's effort. End of quote. And he was right. For millennia, thinkers have been pondering the rise and fall of civilizations, though none more so than Ibn Khaldun, who sought to identify and generalize these patterns into a unified set of historical laws, virtually applicable to any time or place. Greek historians Thucydides and Sumatian from the Han Dynasty, the founding father of Chinese historiography, were two such intellectual figures, both believing their own history to be cyclical, with dynastic leadership at the helm. This belief is embodied in the old Chinese proverb, Fu Bu Guo San Dai. Prosperity does not exceed 3 generations. Ibn Khaldun was educated in Greek sciences and was familiar with Greek thinkers. He made several references to famous Greek figures, like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Euclid, Ptolemy, and Alexander. However, interestingly, he does not make any reference to Thucydides. This indicates that he probably did not have access to his work. Ibn Khaldun was incredibly knowledgeable about the world, but his vast knowledge did not extend to the works of Chinese historians. He was aware of the incredible Chinese civilization, but not of the great historian Sumatian. Despite his best intentions to write a book that captured the entirety of world history down to his time, he was limited by his geographical location and the difficulty of obtaining information about cultures so far away. Therefore, he was not aware of Sumatian's existence. Sumatian, who lived 1,500 years before Ibn Khaldun, had no access to foreign historians. This lack of contact between Chinese and non-Chinese historiographical traditions makes the comparison and contrast between the two thinkers incredibly interesting. It's important to remember, though, that comparison doesn't mean equalization. They each have their own unique context and background. Both Sumatian and Ibn Khaldun are two people who live very far apart in space and time, but their studies were remarkably similar. They analyze history, dynasties, civilized society, the role of barbarians, and human nature, its virtues and its vices. This is all the more exceptional since it reveals that people are essentially the same, subject to the same constants like human nature and variables like economic, geographic, climatic, religious, social, material, and technological conditions. Comparing two great thinkers, Sumatian from China and Ibn Khaldun from the Maghreb, may seem like comparing apples to oranges. After all, they lived in completely different societies and were exposed to different scholarly traditions. But if we look closely, we might find that both of them came to similar conclusions independently. An idea that's truly captivating and worth exploring further. Nowadays, the academic world often looks to Western thinkers like Montesquieu, Durkheim, Marx, Machiavelli, Weber, and Smith for comparison with Ibn Khaldun. But there's a lack of direct comparison between Muslim and traditional Chinese thinkers. Both Sumatian and Ibn Khaldun are remarkable thinkers, each representing different worlds and traditions, Confucian and Abrahamic respectively. To understand this better, we can first explore the similarities and differences between the lives and works of Samathian and Ibn Khaldun. Then, we can analyze how Chinese history fits with Ibn Khaldun's explanation of the cycles of rise and fall and the dichotomy between nomadic tribes and those who live in cities. This is an amazing opportunity to learn about why humans act and interact in a similar manner even though we're also different. First, what did Ibn Khaldun said and knew about China? Ibn Khaldun was an incredible historian who wrote about both Western and Eastern Islamic civilizations. He wanted his history to be as all-encompassing as possible. So he included facts about non-Muslim nations like the Jews, Mongols, Greeks, and Babylonians. Even though he was familiar with other far-flung places like India and China through Muslim historians and travelers like Al-Mas'udi or Ibn Battuta. He didn't have much to say about them. Still, he seemed to have a general knowledge in their Islamic aspects at least. Quote unquote. Abu Hanifa's adherents today are the Iraqis and the Muslims of India, China, Transoxiana, and all the non-Arab Persian Turkish countries. End of quote. At his time, Islamic civilization greatly contributed to the spread of Chinese inventions and goods, like silk and paper, across the world. Thanks to the introduction of paper from China in the 8th century, books have been more widely available than ever before. This was a very important development that contributed greatly to the intellectual and economic gains in the Islamic world. Quote unquote. At this time, we can observe the condition of the merchants from the East. Their prosperity and affluence cannot be fully described because it is so great. Even more so to the Far Eastern merchants from the countries of the non-Arab Iraq, India, and China. We hear remarkable stories reported by travelers about their wealth and prosperity. End of quote. Ibn Khaldun was aware of Chinese civilization and its importance in world history, but he did not have access to enough historical information to write extensively about it. That is why his history has a universal aim but is limited in its geographical scope, due to practical reasons. Quote unquote. In this book of mine, I shall discuss either explicitly or implicitly in connection with the history of the Maghreb, the circumstances of its races and nations and its subjects and dynasties, to the exclusion of any other region. This restriction is necessitated by my lack of knowledge of conditions in the East and among its nations, and by the fact that second-hand information would not give the essential facts that I am after. End of quote. Now, who was the quote-unquote Chinese Ibn Khaldun, Samathian?